Post-traumatic stress disorder, commonly referred to as PTSD, is one of the most difficult disabilities to get correctly service-connected through the VA. This video will provide you with valuable information for your PTSD evaluation by a qualified mental health provider. You need to complete the video in its entirety and make notes as needed to get the full benefit and completely prepare yourself for your upcoming PTSD assessment. Please keep your notes available as a helpful reminder of the VA qualifications for PTSD, for your examination, and any you may have in the future. Please use the information provided in this video to pre-qualify yourself. The VA processes a tremendous amount of veteran claims yearly. Do not delay any of your fellow veterans' claims by unfairly filing for a claim for which you do not qualify and unnecessarily bogging down the already slow-moving VA system. Please ensure you meet the below criteria prior to moving forward with your claim to save yourself and the VA time. We do not want to burden the VA system with claims that will not be approved. If you feel as though you do not qualify after watching this video, then please do not file this PTSD claim with the VA and take attention away from your fellow veterans' legitimate claims. The mental health provider is required to complete a Disability Benefits Questionnaire, or DBQ, by the VA. The DBQ is the assessment tool a mental health provider is required to complete by the VA. There is a DBQ specifically for PTSD. The DBQ must be completed by a licensed psychiatrist or PhD psychologist. The VA has set a high standard to meet their PTSD diagnostic criteria. You must meet all eligibility criteria for VA approval of your PTSD. If you were to look at the DBQ used by the VA, you would see that page 4 contains the PTSD diagnostic criteria that will determine if the VA will recognize your PTSD. The mental health provider will complete the PTSD diagnostic criteria during your evaluation. Although many veterans have varying symptoms of PTSD, they still find themselves not eligible for service connection by the VA. The VA has diagnosed and are actively treating many veterans for PTSD, but those same veterans still find themselves not receiving the compensation for their PTSD. This is the first step in moving toward receiving the benefit Congress has entitled each and every veteran who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. As you head to your evaluation, prepare yourself mentally. You will need to let your emotions and feelings all hang out. Do not be the good soldier and try to guard your emotions. You will need to give an accurate picture of your life secondary to your PTSD. This will allow the medical provider to make an accurate diagnosis of PTSD and gives you the best opportunity to meet the VA standards for a PTSD diagnosis. Your true emotions have to be on display for the medical provider to correctly diagnose your PTSD. The rest of this video will list the 5 criterions the VA uses to diagnose PTSD in veterans. Please pay close attention to each criterion. Ensure you meet the standards for each criterion. If you do not meet each criterion standard, then the VA will deny your PTSD claim. You may want to note examples present in your life as you go throughout this video, so please stop it as needed. Keep in mind, these criterions are set by the VA, and you must meet each standard set for all criterions to have a PTSD diagnosis by VA standards. The criterions start with the stressor that caused your PTSD. Criterion A. Must have exposure to traumatic event. Both of the following must be checked by the mental health provider. The veteran experienced, witnessed, or was confronted with an event that involved the actual or threatened death or serious injury or threat to the physical integrity of self or others. The veteran's response involved intense fear, helplessness, or horror. Both of these criterions must have been experienced by you to qualify for a PTSD diagnosis under the current VA regulations. If these two did not occur while in the military, then no matter what else you are able to check off, you will not be approved for a PTSD claim by the VA. You must have been involved in a situation where you or someone around you were and/or could have been injured or killed. Your feelings at the time must have been one of these three responses required by the VA: fear, horror, or helplessness. Helplessness is a feeling of being powerless to change the outcome during the event. Once criterion A is met, the examiner will focus on criterion B. You must be re-experiencing the traumatic event in one or more of the following: recurrent and distressing recollections of the event, including images, thoughts, or perceptions; recurrent distressing dreams of the event; acting or feeling as if the traumatic event were recurring. This includes a sense of reliving the experience, illusions, hallucinations, and dissociative flashback episodes, including those that occur on awakening or when intoxicated; intense psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event; physiological reactivity on exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. You must be re-experiencing the event that led to your PTSD in one of the 5 ways as required by the VA. The first 3 are fairly straightforward. The last 2, intense psychological distress and physiological reactivity, may be thought of as the following. Intense psychological distress would include unpleasant feelings or emotions that impact your level of functioning due to internal cues, such as thoughts, body movement, or positioning, or external cues, such as smells or sounds, like a car backfiring or fireworks. Physiological reactivity would be your body's response to the internal or external cues, like increased heart or hyperventilation, sweating, tremoring, or any other physical reaction. Criterion C will evaluate the ways you try to avoid stimuli to the trauma, and you must have at least 3 of the following ways: efforts to avoid thoughts, feelings, or conversations associated with the trauma; efforts to avoid activities, places, or people that arouse recollections of the trauma; not going to certain types of movies that involve war scenes; avoiding places where soldiers or ex-soldiers gather; inability to recall an important aspect of the trauma, blocking out memories of the event; markedly diminished interest or participation in significant activities, not being able to attend special family events like birthday parties, weddings, or funerals of family or friends; feeling of detachment or estrangement from others; being a loner, few friends; restricted range of affection, example, unable to have loving feelings and connect with others; sense of a foreshortened future, does not expect to have a career, marriage, children, or a normal lifespan. The VA requires you to try to avoid stimuli in at least 3 of these 7 ways that would cause you distress over your PTSD. Criterion D will assess your personal response. As a result of your PTSD, you can't do the following. Must have at least 2. Difficulty falling or staying asleep; irritability or outbursts of anger; difficulty concentrating on tasks; hypervigilance, which is always being on guard, checking locked doors repetitively, not sitting with your back to people. Exaggerated startle response may include flinching to someone touching you to get your attention, or car backfiring. You must have at least 2 of these 5 symptoms present secondary to your PTSD. Criterion E will cover the duration of your symptoms. Have your symptoms been occurring for less or more than 1 month? The duration of the symptoms described in Criterion B, C, and D is more than 1 month. The duration of the symptoms described in Criterion B, C, and D is less than 1 month. The medical provider will need to know how long you have been dealing with your PTSD. Now that we've covered the criterions the VA has determined will be used to diagnose PTSD, you must ask yourself, do you meet each individual criterion used by the VA? If you believe you meet the standards established by the VA for PTSD, please continue to our next video to cover the symptoms for PTSD. If you do not feel as though you meet the standards, please contact our office at 1-888-988-3837. Did you take notes throughout the video? We strongly encourage you to take notes for each criterion. Keep the notes for your examination by the medical provider. You must meet each of the qualifications set for the individual criterion in order to meet the VA's standard for a PTSD diagnosis. Please review this presentation several times before your appointment with a mental health provider to refresh your memory. You can also stop the presentation as needed to take notes and have your notes available to you during your mental health assessment. This concludes the presentation on the VA diagnostic criteria for PTSD. Please ensure you complete the video prep on the symptomology the mental health provider will be evaluating during your examination. If you feel as though you do not meet the VA's diagnostic criteria for PTSD, please call the office and ask to speak to one of our Lifestyle Impact team members.